All right, we are live, and I hope everybody's had a great day despite what's going on in the markets. I want to get this started off. Live streaming is kind of a new thing for me, but you guys seem to enjoy it a lot, and I'm extremely grateful for that. But to kind of control the spam, I do have members only mode activated in the chat. It's just something that I like to do is gift like 5 to 10 memberships right off the rip for some of you that show up early to these streams and want to be heard and ask questions. So I'm going to get that done really quickly if I can remember how to gift memberships. And we're going to get into the actual content of this. I got to remember how to do this. So hang with me. Already 100 of you in here, which is incredible. Thank you so much. Okay, let me go here. Membership gifting. This looks right. And hang on. We're almost there. Then we got to talk about the Bitcoin miners. My video yesterday, which absolutely crazy. Okay, here we go. All right. I think I just gifted 5 memberships. So I might do 5 more. We'll see. But if you want to join the chat, it's like $3. I think it's the cheapest I could make it. But again, just to control the spam. Anyways, let's discuss kind of what's been going on. It was an interesting day. Let me flip to my Google Chrome screen here. Bitcoin itself is less than 2% away from $100,000. I call it $98,000 right now that it's trading at. One would think that if Bitcoin's up 4% in a day, the Bitcoin mining stocks would be up much more than the 4%, but it was kind of more of the same. What I talked about in yesterday's video, where CleanSpark had an extremely painful day, down 7.5%. And I consider myself to be a very, very patient investor. I consider myself to be somebody that can take a lot of crap from the markets. I am a fundamentally driven investor. I hardly ever pay attention to technicals. But what I identified that was going on when it comes to the MicroStrategy and Mara pair trade, that's more technically driven, and it really kind of rubs me the wrong way. I'm competitive in spirit. That's just who I am and how I am naturally, is I'm competitive, and I feel like the market's kind of against me. Now, that really doesn't matter. I never would have guessed that this video I posted yesterday would reach 45,000 views. 45,000 views in less than 24 hours. I mean, that is ridiculous that 45,000 people chose to click on that video. So before I get into this, I just want to say thank you. Thank you. I live in a town, and I grew up in a town of 7,500 people. Okay? So 45,000 people clicking on this video is just insane to me. And this is a video that I kind of just recorded on the spot. I thought it was interesting. And it was one of those videos that I didn't think would ever gain that much traction because it's such a niche topic. Such a niche topic. But now in less than 24 hours, it's become my best performing video ever. So hopefully I can continue to build on this momentum. We've had an extremely good last couple of years on this YouTube channel when it comes to our successes in the stock market. A lot of you guys know that. But thank you for that. The title of this stream is, What If I'm Wrong About the Bitcoin Miners? I talked about in this video yesterday how, just to put it as simply as possible, as a result of MicroStrategy and Mara's convertible bonds, there are hedge funds, there are bond-only funds, there's just big money out there, billions of dollars, that is hedging their long exposure to these convertible bonds by short selling the rest of the industry. So they're betting against the rest of the Bitcoin miners like CleanSpark, which is the company that I personally own. It's no happenstance that all of the Bitcoin mining stocks, though, outside of Mara, have really struggled this week despite Bitcoin doing really well. It's because of all of that short pressure being put on the Bitcoin mining stocks. So there's a couple notes that I want to make right now. First of all, no matter what, a short seller always has to buy the stock at some point in the future. So you might be freaking out right now, and rightfully so. This is painful. We've been preparing for this. I mean, I've talked about it on my YouTube channel. If Bitcoin goes to $100,000, the Bitcoin mining stocks should do very, very well. And CleanSpark has done well, but not as well as it should. And especially over the past week, it has significantly underperformed. So it's really challenging at this point in time to be patient with with the hand we're dealt. But that's really the only option we have. And I want to remind everybody that every short seller eventually has to buy the stock. That's one of Warren Buffett's most famous sayings, is he encourages short selling because it is a guaranteed buyer at some point in the future. And at some point in the future, these short sellers will have to buy to cover their short. That's how short selling works. That's how you profit on it. You borrow shares, sell them into the markets, and buy the shares back for cheap and repay the loan, basically. So being patient is so tricky. The other note I want to make, and this more has to do with the title of this live stream. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong about Bitcoin mining stocks? What if I'm wrong about my thesis that they're going to do extremely well if Bitcoin does extremely well? And certainly I think that's coming across a lot of you guys' minds right now is, did I make a mistake? Am I wrong about my thesis in these companies? And I see it all over social media. I see it all over in my own Discord server, which is crazy because I consider my Discord server to be some very patient investors. They reflect a lot of my investing philosophy, but even some of them are losing patience and their emotions are starting to take control of them and their investing decisions. And that is a big mistake when you let your emotions control your business decisions. You never want to do that. Now, the point I was going to make is, in my mind, there are three different things that could be happening right now. The first option is that legitimate investors, legitimate players with big money have just decided on the snap of a fingers that owning Bitcoin mining stocks is a terrible idea, that these business fundamentals keep getting worse, which I don't assign much likelihood to that. I don't, because nobody in their right mind, no fundamental investor in their right mind looks at the price of Bitcoin going up to $98,000 and says, today I'm going to sell my Bitcoin mining stocks because their business sucks. Now, maybe they would if Bitcoin was really, really struggling. We think back to when Bitcoin was at $20,000, when I did a lot of my buying of CleanSpark stock, and I know a lot of you did too. Yeah, there was a lot of fundamental investors that were selling their Bitcoin mining stocks because they thought Bitcoin was going to fail. But at $98,000 and with Bitcoin approaching $100,000 and getting closer each and every day, it doesn't make sense for a fundamental investor with his head screwed on straight to decide, wow, this is a horrible investment. I am selling this today. So I don't assign much likelihood to that. This morning I put out a tweet. And if you guys followed the markets today, you're aware of this. A mere 30 minutes ago, so I tweeted this about 30 minutes after the market opened, the markets couldn't get their hands on enough Bitcoin miners. CleanSpark today was up more than 7% in the first 10 minutes of trading. However, 30 minutes later, the markets just changed their mind. They decided that they can't get their hands off of Bitcoin mining stocks and off of CleanSpark fast enough. And all of a sudden, CleanSpark stock was down 5%. Within 30 minutes, the markets decided, they completely changed their mind from saying, whoa, this is a great investment opportunity. Bitcoin is going up. These Bitcoin mining stocks, their business fundamentals are better than they have been in a very long time, to, wow, Bitcoin mining stocks really suck. Fundamentally, they're terrible. Like that sort of switch just doesn't happen in a legitimate market. And I said, this is not natural. And I think that sums up what I'm trying to say today, that a lot of what's going on is not legitimate investors that have their heads screwed on straight deciding to sell these Bitcoin mining stocks, because that wouldn't make sense. That wouldn't make sense. So the other two options are, yes, as a result of the MicroStrategy and Mara pair trade and those convertible bonds, there is massive short pressure being put on the rest of the Bitcoin mining space. I think a lot of you would agree with me. I didn't think, again, that video yesterday would get so much traction, but I think the 45,000 views speak to the authenticity of it, the accuracy of it, that you guys truly believe in what I'm seeing and my findings, that they are legitimate. And I think, again, we look at CleanSpark today, for example, up more than 5% right after market open, and it fades within a half hour to down 5% plus. That is clearly some sort of manipulation. And that grinds my gears to hear me even say those words, because I hate when people blame manipulation. But it's important to recognize, it is so important to recognize when manipulation has taken place, so you don't make a mistake and sell out of your investments when you shouldn't sell them. Ask yourself, fundamentally right now, are Bitcoin mining companies healthier than they were a year ago? Your answer should be yes. Absolutely they are. So why would you decide to sell your Bitcoin mining stocks just because there's some sort of market manipulation going on from a massive amount of short pressure being put on these stocks? That's artificial selling. That's not somebody out there that's not a smart investor out there saying, I'm selling this because the business model sucks. Those are investors out there hedging their long exposure because they believe in Bitcoin by shorting the rest of the industry. So it's artificial selling pressure. Right? That's an important note to make. A very, very important note to make. Now, the third option, and I think this actually goes in tandem with the second option, which is what I just discussed. The very third option is that we have a lot of emotional traders. And I think that's a fact. I would assume we have more than 400 people watching this, by the way. That's crazy. Thank you. I would assume some of you watching this today had your finger on the sell button, but maybe you didn't decide to do it. I hope you didn't. That's not financial advice. That's just my personal opinion, because I think, this is just setting up for a massive short squeeze at some point in the future, and all it takes is a little bit of patience. But when you have that artificial selling pressure during a time period where you would assume your investment should be making you a ton of money, you do start to question if you're wrong about your thesis in these investments. So I think that emotional trading, it's another layer to the artificial short selling pressure. I know people with hundreds of thousands of shares owned in CleanSpark stock, and even they are starting to question if they're right or wrong about their investment in this company. People with a lot of money, more money than I have right now. Now, I'm pretty young, but that still, that says something. I have a lot of money in CleanSpark stock. And yeah, I feel the pain just like you, but what if I am wrong? What if I am wrong? It's a possibility. I just think the possibilities of it are extremely low, And I believe in the future of Bitcoin. I believe with Donald Trump becoming the president of the United States, I'm relatively nonpartisan. In fact, I'm a registered nonpartisan, but I believe because Donald Trump doesn't believe there's a proper limit to economic growth, that our economy is going to perform tremendously. I believe as a result of all the stimulus coming in from the president of the United States, the Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve, you name it, that our economy is going to do very well. There is a lot of stimulus coming the economy's direction, and our economy is arguably already trending above average right now. So what does that mean? I've talked about this in the past, and maybe some of you are new to this YouTube channel. If you are, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button for me. What does that mean? Well, I've said this before. I firmly believe that Bitcoin mining stocks are going to follow risk appetite in the markets much more than they're actually going to follow Bitcoin's price action. We can look historically, CleanSpark over the past year is up 186%. What has happened to risk appetite over the last year? Well, it has increased because people started to talk about rate cuts and the cost of capital decreasing. Okay, looks like we're back. Sorry about that. I don't know what went on there. Thanks for sticking with me. I don't even remember what I was talking about. I was on a tangent, and now that threw me off. Okay, risk appetite. What has happened since November 11th? Well, we had risk appetite increase as a result of Donald Trump being elected. People wanted to take on more risk. And as a result of that, Bitcoin mining stocks went up in price. And you can see on September 6th, which is essentially when the Federal Reserve cut interest rates, that was essentially the local bottom for a lot of Bitcoin mining stocks. Risk appetite increased because interest rates went down. Now, if you go back and look at the 10-year Treasury yield, for example, ever since November 11th, November 12th, it's actually gotten more expensive to borrow money because the debt markets are basically trying to tighten credit conditions and tighten the economy because they think the Federal Reserve is too aggressive right now. And they very well could be too aggressive. But if you're an investor in this space, that's the question you have to ask. Where is risk appetite going to go? Because that tells you where Bitcoin mining price action is going to go. If risk appetite increases, which I think it will, Bitcoin mining stocks are going to do just fine. There have been numerous time periods in the past where Bitcoin mining stocks were very disappointing in price action. I would say, I've been a part of the space for quite a while. I would say the past week has been probably top of the ladder when it comes to the most disappointing weeks of price action. But that doesn't change my fundamental view of why I own these companies and why I am so invested in small cap companies right now. I think risk appetite's going to increase. I think interest rates are coming down over the long term. And as a result of that, I want to be early to these things. If you're just part of the flock, that flocks to whatever's hot in the stock market, you're going to underperform long term. That's a given fact. To beat the markets, you have to beat the markets to the next trend or the next theme. That's why I've spent the last year trying to get as much exposure as I can to the small cap companies and the Bitcoin miners and the risk on trade. Now, there's no guarantee that I'm going to be right, but in order to beat the markets, you have to beat the markets to whatever the next trend is going to be. So yes, this is painful. Now, my average cost on CleanSpark is around $7, so I'm in relatively good shape. And maybe that speaks to why a lot of people are emotional right now. A lot of people probably are underwater on their investment in the Bitcoin mining stocks because they bought. I mean, a lot of people bought the Bitcoin mining stocks a couple of weeks ago. Last week, in the middle of November, when things were looking really, really, really good. Well, what did I just get done telling you? If you follow the flock, you're going to fail. So all of the people that chose now it's finally time to buy into the Bitcoin mining stocks a couple of weeks ago, they're deeply underwater. But I'm here to tell you today, I reworked my CleanSpark price target spreadsheet, and that's made available to my monthly members. I'm entirely self-funded. I'm entirely independent. So shout out to all of you that support me. We have close to 300 members now, I think. Crazy. But I reworked my CleanSpark fair value spreadsheet because I started questioning myself. Am I missing something here? Did I miscalculate something here? I reran all of my numbers. I increased my expected Bitcoin network hash rate through 2030. I increased my cost of revenues for the company slightly through 2030. I changed some things in the company's trajectory of their Bitcoin hodl balance, which I think will reach 55,000 Bitcoin by the year 2030. I made changes, but I came to pretty much the same conclusion. I've put out videos in the past, and this looked really good. This was looking really good. I thought that CleanSpark would close the year out at about $25 per share, 26, 27, maybe close to 30 at one point. That looked really good a couple of weeks ago. And now all of a sudden it looks terrible. But again, that's not representative of the business fundamentals here. You can look at things like hash prices, hash costs, which gets kind of nerdy. But right now it's a fact that fundamentally the Bitcoin mining companies are healthier than they have been in a very, very long time. And if you don't want to get wrapped up in the emotions and the artificial selling being caused by all of this short pressure, you have to look at the fundamentals. And that's what any of the greatest investors of all time would tell you to do. Look at the business. the business is the stock price is not always representative of how the business is performing. That's what presents opportunities in the stock market. And I think that's a key thing to pay attention to. So all of this artificial selling pressure, am I worried about it? No, because another note you have to remember is there have been billions of dollars of these convertible bonds that have been signed or written, whatever the right terminology is there. Billions of dollars in the past couple of weeks from MicroStrategy and Mara. Billions of dollars, which means that there's been billions of dollars hedging that same long exposure by shorting the rest of the industry. You have to recognize that at some point, that initial hedge is going to be placed, and all of a sudden, that artificial selling pressure from that initial hedge being placed fades away. And then from that point forward, as the price of Bitcoin goes up and investors start to buy Bitcoin mining stocks, that's when it gets exciting. So, I put out the tweet today. I think it was this one, and somebody replied that Rex is losing conviction. Rex is thinking about selling his Bitcoin mining stocks, but that is the wrong takeaway. I'll tell you, that is the wrong takeaway. What I'm saying with all of this stuff, manipulation exists right now. That's a fact. Short selling pressure exists right now. That's a fact. But what I'm saying is all it's going to take is a little bit more patience. A little bit more patience, because the more short pressure that's put on these stocks, the higher they go in the future. I started off this live stream by saying every single short seller eventually has to buy the stock. It's mandatory if you short sell a company. You have to buy that stock at some point in the future. And if the short pressure continues to get just ridiculous, at some point things are going to start to flip. And one short seller is going to have to cover their position, which causes a second short seller to have to cover their position. That's why it's called a short squeeze. It's a snowball effect that gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's not for the faint of heart. Very few people are going to capitalize on this. I've seen this play out so many times in the stock market. Very, very few people are actually going to see this through and be able to capitalize on this, because most of us are going to lose our minds. And hopefully by me putting out all this content and talking through this can kind of be a therapy session of sorts. In my personal opinion, based on the research I have done, and based on, I won't show it on the screen because I don't want to leak any email addresses, but I've reached out to Wall Street analysts that cover the Bitcoin mining space. And I've asked them what the heck is going on. And they're kind of at a loss, just like all of us are. But their price targets, their fair values for these companies, they haven't changed. And they actually are pretty similar to what my fair value for these companies is as well, specifically CleanSpark. So it's just an interesting time period where if you have to keep your emotions away from your investing decisions. And that's the bottom line. It's challenging. If it was easy, if there was a get rich quick scheme in the markets, everybody would do it. Everybody would do it. And it would be easy and everybody would be a trillionaire. But that's just not reality. This stuff is difficult. This is hard. Individual stock picking takes so much patience and mental wherewithal and research and hard work that so many people just don't possess. But that opens the door of possibility to the rest of us that do want to put in the work, that do have the patience, and that do trust their own research and due diligence. So trust in yourself. Ignore what the markets are saying right now. They can be informative to you. It's been informative to us. We talked about just based on the price action. That's how I came to the conclusion and started to look into this whole deal with MicroStrategy and Mara more in depth. It was informative what was going on in the marketplace, but I never let that dictate my buying and selling decisions. And if everybody else wants to sell their Bitcoin mining companies, I'll gladly scoop them up for pennies on the dollar. I just don't care. I care about my claim to these companies' Bitcoin treasuries. I care about my claim to these companies' revenues. I care about my claim to these companies' earnings and profits. I don't care if Wall Street, these bond funds, are short selling these companies into oblivion, straight into the depths of hell short term. I don't care. It's informative, but it's not going to dictate my buying and selling decisions. That's the challenge I issue to you today if you're watching this live stream. Don't let your emotions, don't let the marketplace dictate what you do with your holdings that you believe in and that you have done the research for. Because that's going to be a losing strategy long term. And I'm going to say this, I don't make short-term calls very often. I really don't, because I also think that's a losing game. It's a good way to lose credibility. But I am so confident in this that I'm willing to make this short-term prediction. I believe that we are at or very, very, very close to the bottom of the Bitcoin mining stock prices, short term. The reason I say that is because you go on X, you go on YouTube, and all you see is people freaking out, selling their Bitcoin mining stocks. And what did we talk about? They're part of the flock. All of a sudden they say, I'm selling all my miners, I'm buying MicroStrategy, which I think MicroStrategy, it's going to perform great if Bitcoin does well. But from here on out, I think it's going to underperform the Bitcoin mining stocks. And everybody that's flocking to what's popular, which is MicroStrategy and Mara right now, it's a fact they're going to underperform the people that aren't a part of the flock and that the people that think independently. But I personally and this is just personal anecdote, so take this with a grain of salt, but on social media, I see retail investor capitulation right now. And you have to remember also that at a certain point, the people with weak hands that want to sell, the people that just can't take this any longer, all of those people are going to have sold their stocks at some point in time. You can think of it kind of as a balance where, before this week, there's a lot of weak hands willing to sell their stocks if things didn't go well. Well, things haven't gone well, so they've sold their stocks, so that tips the balance being back this way. Now there's a lot of people that, or maybe I should say there's a lack of selling pressure out there from the emotional traders, and eventually this initial short pressure is going to calm down and cool off a little bit. And all you're going to be left with is people with capital that are willing to buy. And I talked about risk. I have some questions in the chat I'll get to in a second. But I talked about risk appetite. I saw it in the headline today, and you can look at this as well. Money sitting in money market mutual funds right now, it reached a new record high. Over $7 trillion is sitting in money market mutual funds, earning risk-free return on government debt. When that is true, it's a fact also that risk appetite is very, very low in the markets. And you can look at the price of gold. You can look at how small caps have performed. Risk appetite is nowhere to be found. And that's why I'm so excited. I don't think we've even gotten close to the peak of this cycle, because retail investors right now still are pretty weak. And risk appetite right now is still pretty weak, which sets the stage when all this short pressure continues to mount for a big rally at some point in the future. But again, I've said it a million times, it takes patience that not everybody has. Anyways, let's get to some comments here in the chat. Again, live stream chat is only $3. You can join it by hitting the join button located right next to the subscribe button. Helps me out, and it's super cheap. It keeps the spam away. But I am entirely independent and self-funded, so all of your support means a lot to me. But just thank you for showing up and watching this live stream. It's been surreal. The video yesterday having 45,000 views, like what? Insane. Okay, Frederick said, can you please, I can pull this up on screen. See, new streaming software that I'm not quite used to yet. There we go. Can you please elaborate on when you think the shorts may have to cover their positions or buy mining stocks back when Q4 earnings, most likely very good, are published? So this is a question. This is the $1 million question. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I know something that everybody else doesn't know. I'm not your typical stock market commentator that's going to lie to you and say, oh, just one more dip and things are going to go, skyrocket. I'm not somebody that's going to sit here and pretend that I know better than everybody else. I will tell you my educated opinion. I do hours and hours and hours and hours of research every single day. Every single day I do research. And I talk to people that are involved. When do I think the shorts may have to cover their positions? So first of all, I think the big point here is that over the last few days, the reason that the entire mining sector has felt pain is because that initial hedge position has been placed. where, we take Mara, they had a $1 billion convertible bond that was, just signed, $1 billion. Well, everybody that holds those bonds, they're going to hedge that call option. They're hedging that call option by shorting the rest of the sector. And if they short the rest of the sector rather than Mara stock itself, they don't hurt the possibility of that call option being exercised profitably. And that's kind of simplifying things, but I hope that makes sense. But I think starting next week, you're really going to start to see the miners start to catch up a little bit because the initial short position is going to have been placed. I mentioned on Twitter also a few ideas I had as to how companies could punch back against this. They could join the party. I mean, they could sign their own convertible bonds. I'm assuming all of the Bitcoin miners or mining companies in the space, they've received interest. There's money out there. There's demand for it. I think every company could go out there and do it. But I do think that would kind of be a knee-jerk reaction. I see this on Twitter too. Everybody's saying, you got to join the party because the markets right now are rewarding that sort of behavior. But again, that sort of thinking doesn't take into consideration the fundamentals of the business. And that usually is when investors start to think more emotionally and technically, then fundamentally, it's typically indicative of some sort of bubble or peak interest or I don't know. But I think that'd be kind of a knee-jerk reaction by a lot of these companies to go out and sign these convertible bonds and go buy Bitcoin and copy the MicroStrategy playbook. There is no free money system out there. Michael Saylor is a very smart individual. This strategy, this plan is working out great as the price of Bitcoin goes up, but there is no infinite money glitch. I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. And at a certain point, the rah-rah of these convertible bonds is going to wear off a little bit, and you don't want to make a mistake that costs your shareholders. People also forget that convertible bonds, they're dilutive. They are dilutive. If you convert your debt to equity, the existing shareholders are going to be diluted. That is and thank you all you new members. I see you popping up in the chat. But convertible bonds are dilutive in nature. So you're not avoiding dilution necessarily by taking on $1 billion in convertible debt. So I don't know. It's a tough question to answer. Again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know exactly when the short's going to have to start covering. I floated around the idea on X that if Bitcoin starts to make outsized moves above $100,000, that yeah, maybe that could be when. I think something jolting has to take place though. Again, next week, I think the initial short pressure will already have been placed and the additional short pressure is going to kind of wane, which should help out a little bit. I hope that makes sense what I'm explaining there. But yeah, something very, very important has to take place. And I don't know if that's a new press release. CleanSpark comes out and announces that they're going to expand even more, or they come out and say that they're going to invest in their own energy assets so that they're not reliant on paying the power grid to mine Bitcoin. Something like that that's really jolting short term. But again, I talked about it, Frederick, in this live stream. I just think it's going to take patience. And it's going to take patience from us investors, but it's also going to take patience from these management teams, not to make knee-jerk reactions to short-term market dynamics. I don't know. Good question. Let me know if you have any ideas. I do think Q4 earnings are clearly going to be good, but the thing with Bitcoin mining companies is, and I don't think a lot of people recognize this, the thing with Bitcoin mining companies is their results really they're never really a surprise because you can track their daily Bitcoin production. You generally know what their power costs are. You generally know what their depreciation is going to be. You generally know all of these inputs that companies use to get their net profits, and you generally know how much cash a company has. There really aren't many surprises with earnings reports. Everybody, I guess what I'm trying to say is everybody already knows that quarter four earnings are going to be really good. So I don't know if that's going to provide that knee jerk that makes shorts cover. I think this is going to be more of a long-term grind. I don't think shorts covering is just going to happen overnight where tomorrow CleanSpark goes to $30 a share. I don't think that's how it's going to take place. I think it's going to be a culmination of things paired with patience that actually makes the shorts cover their shorts. And you just asked the question I answered, so sorry I didn't see that. I could have brought it up on the screen. But yeah, I answered the Q4 reports. Now, when it comes to forward guidance of miners, yes, that could make a difference. It could make a difference, but then you run into the problem again, and this happened in 2020. I was here for it, or 2021. You run into the problem of companies way overestimating what they're capable of doing. So then they just come in and disappoint investors when they don't reach their guidance targets or their projections. They come in and disappoint investors, or they start to freak out. Oh crap, we're not on track to reach our targets. We better take out a bunch of debt and sell a bunch of shares right now so we can expedite this process. And then these companies get over leveraged and Bitcoin falls 20, 30, 40%. And then you have bankruptcies happen. I mean, this happens in every new technology, every cycle. And maybe that's what I should kind of end this live stream on is, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody. I keep saying everybody, but a lot of people in this space believe in a 4-year Bitcoin cycle. That's just perfectly predictable. And these companies need to make these moves now before the cycle ends. And we're back in the bear cycle. I don't think that's good thinking. Because it goes back to there's no infinite money glitch in the stock market. There just isn't, other than buying and holding long term. That's the only infinite money glitch that exists. But, when it comes to a supposedly perfectly predictable cycle, if anything is perfectly predictable, it means everybody's going to front run the top and everybody's going to front run the bottom, which renders it perfectly unpredictable. And then you have all of these outside variables at play. Governments acquiring Bitcoin, a strategic Bitcoin reserve being established, Pennsylvania, Texas, Wyoming, their own strategic reserves. You can't control buying pressure. You cannot control the supply and demand. You cannot perfectly predict what the economy is going to do. And I think Bitcoin is going to be more, it's going to reflect what the economy is doing much more than it's going to reflect, some sort of 4-year cycle. And you also have to remember when it comes to the halving events where Bitcoin production gets cut in half every 4 years, that's going to matter less and less and less. So I don't know. I think if you want my honest opinion, and maybe you've been following this YouTube channel for a while, I'm going to have a video out probably tomorrow discussing this more in depth. The Donald Trump presidency and what it means for the stock market, the economy, and Bitcoin. But I personally believe that the odds of the good times rolling on and into the 2030s have only increased. And, you think of, I've talked about this too, a lot of the reason Bitcoin's done so well, despite risk assets doing poorly, is because Bitcoin all of a sudden has become a hedge to economic sanctions. Russia invades Ukraine. What does the United States do? We freeze Russia's assets that are sitting in United States dollars. We seize them, and now we're using that money to defend and protect and rebuild Ukraine. So our adversaries, countries all over the world, they're just looking to get away from their exposure to the United States dollar. And how do they do that? Well, they buy gold. You can look at the data. Countries are buying gold like crazy. They buy Bitcoin. You can look at the data there too. Countries are buying Bitcoin like crazy. So you have that dynamic at play. It's an inflation hedge. All assets technically are inflation hedges. And then it's a hedge against our current monetary system failing. And how do I think the next big crash is going to occur? I don't think it's going to be some recession. We just had the most anticipated recession of all times the last couple of years, and it never showed up. And now the Federal Reserve is cutting interest rates. The Fed is stimulating. The president's stimulating. The Treasury is stimulating. And people still think that they think a recession is likely when we didn't even get one before this stimulus came through the pipeline. I mean, I just don't see it happening. So what I actually see occurring now, and it partly has to do with Trump not believing in a proper limit to economic growth. There's a lot of things at play. A lot of things. It's so complicated. I mean, I could talk about this for 24 hours and still not cover all areas of the economy. But what I think is going to happen, guys, is we're going to form an asset bubble. We are going to form an asset bubble. That's the only scenario that I can see playing out right now. The market's going to melt up. We're going to form a bubble, and that bubble will pop. And as a result of that bubble popping, people, losing their wealth, that's when the recession could take place. But we're not in bubble territory yet. AI spend, it's crazy. I've been one of the naysayers of the AI spend, and I think I've mostly been proven correct. I've been wrong about some things, but even AI spend, think about the tens of billions of dollars that are going into AI spend and how that even just circles through the economy, trickles down in the economy, trickle down economics. All of that AI spend, it goes from the AI infrastructure providers, the GPU providers, the people that provide lunch to the AI, the people that work the AI data centers. It trickles all the way through the economy. And if interest rates are set to keep coming down, and we're getting all of this stimulus from everywhere, and China's economy is probably eventually going to bounce back, it leads to an economy that eventually overheats, but I don't know if that can happen until 2030 personally. I really don't. And that's why I believe so strongly in the risk on trade right now. I think the next 5 years could be life-changing for a lot of people. Life-changing for a lot of people. But it comes down to, again, you have to have the patience, you have to trust your research and due diligence, you have to trust the fundamentals rather than the technical crap that's happening in the market short term. I'll pull it back on the screen one more time here. The video yesterday, I never would have guessed it would have gotten 45,000 views and counting. 45,000 views, absolutely ridiculous. I thank each and every one of you for that. And that, this has received a lot of attention on social media. I think this has been very helpful to a lot of people, and that's what I'm here for. I want to enrich everybody's experience, and I want to make sure everybody that comes across my YouTube channel leaves better off financially than they were before they stumbled upon my videos. That's my goal. That's my only goal in doing this. So I hope I deliver that to a lot of you. But we can pay all the attention in the world to what's going on technically. All of this short pressure, billions of dollars in short pressure being put on these stocks. And how that sucks, and how I'm going to sell my stocks because they haven't performed short term. But instead, we need to take this and let it be informative of what's going on and actually prove to us that right now we should not be selling the Bitcoin mining companies. And again, that's my opinion. But if you're going to sell your companies because things are happening technically in the stock market rather than focusing on the business fundamentals, I mean, you're going to lose. You're going to lose in the stock market. And don't kid yourself. I feel the pain of this too. I do. I mean, CleanSpark makes up just slightly less than 50% of my portfolio, not by choice, but because it's grown into that large of a position for me. Not by choice. So now I have some concentration risk, but that means that CleanSpark's price movements affect me a lot. And I'd be lying to you if I said that today and this week haven't sucked. I'd be lying to you. But you have to ground yourself. Trust your research. Trust your understanding of what's going on in the economy. Trust your understanding of what's going on at these companies. But anyways, I want to say thank you all one more time for all of the support on the YouTube channel. It's been just crazy. If you want extra access to my brain, research reports, price target spreadsheets, economic breakdowns, etc., consider joining the membership. You can hit the join button located right next to the subscribe button. It helps me out tremendously. I'm self-funded and independent, and I can't thank you enough. But just thank you for showing up and giving me your time of day. We had over 600 people watching this thing live, and I hope I calmed some of your fears. This live stream's titled "What If I'm Wrong About Bitcoin Mining Stocks or Bitcoin Miners?" I don't think I'm wrong, and if I am, I don't think the downside is much lower than where we're at right now, just based on market dynamics and the economy. But with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. Keep 10 toes to the ground and your chin up. Peace out.